Let's drop the green flag on this episode of the Talent Tank Podcast with your host, Wyatt Pemberton, bringing you the best, fastest, most knowledgeable personalities in Ultra 4 and off-road racing.
All right, here we go. Welcome back, the Talent Tank, episode number 3. Today, gracing us from the great state of Michigan, multiple EMC winning champion, Casey Gilbert, Gilbert Brothers Motorsports. He's the driver of the 618 4800 class Legends car. Casey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing this morning?
Just getting going. It is morning. It was the only time between the two of our schedules we could make this happen. Glad we finally got to tie it down. We were able to get you pulled away from work, pulled away from the family, pulled away from race prep, pulled away from all that. So hopefully we'll fall down a rabbit hole for the next hour and find out all about this guy that's racing out of the Great North Woods, right?
Well, thanks for having me this morning. Excited to talk to you and discuss what we do over here.
Certainly I want to talk about, why are you sandbagging in 4800? Why aren't you running 4400? I mean, you've got 2 KOH EMC wins in a row. You should be forced up a class, in my opinion. You're a Michigan guy, born and raised, right?
Yep. I was actually born just a couple miles away from where we grew up. My parents still live in the same home here, just south of Fenton, Michigan. We're actually building a new house just right down the road from them right now.
Where is GM Proving Grounds at? It's there somewhere close, right?
Yeah, we're about 10 miles north of the GM Proving Grounds.
That's a suburb of Detroit, northwest side. Is that right?
We're in GM country up here, just south of Flint.
I've actually been to Fenton. I came and visited Mike Coville.
I'm about 2 miles from his house right now.
Before he moved to China. But
yeah, he's still there.
Same place he didn't sell, kept it and everything?
Yeah.
Kept his shop, all that?
He rented it out. Yep. That's kind of how I met Mike, is when he was doing that, I guess it was the E-Rock back then.
Okay.
Down in Tennessee, he was building that new, he started building his own rock crawler, and I got a hold of him. He was trying to sell that aluminum CJ, and I ended up buying it from him piecemeal, and he allowed me to write him, I think it was 7 checks I had to write him for the body of that for $400 a piece, because this is like right when I got out of high school. And each month he would go cash one of those checks, or he'd call me or I'd call him and it'd say, okay, you can go cash another check. So I bought that aluminum CJ from him basically on a payment plan, like right when I met him.
I love it. Yeah. So what was that? Was it about 04, 05?
I would say 02, 03, yeah.
Wow. That's almost like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. So I know you've got a wife, Megan, 2 kids. You've got almost a middle schooler, or?
I've got a son, Aiden. He's going into 5th grade this year.
He's a big man on campus.
Yeah, he thinks he's tough now. He just started his first couple weeks of conditioning now. He's starting to play tackle football. That's his big thing right now.
And, his dad is a famous race car driver. So yeah, he's got that in his back pocket.
Yep.
And then you have a daughter, Addison. Is that right?
Addison, she's 5.
Kindergarten yet?
She starts kindergarten this year. We think she's going to be the wild one. She's kind of fearless, and we just bought her one of those Razor 170s. They both got those, and they race around the farm on them. And she's ride or die, full throttle everywhere she goes.
That's amazing. You got to start them young. I love the Gilbert brothers mentality on this. Teach them young. So have they learned to fix and repair?
Yeah. I try and include them every time they're, they break them or they're working on them. We won't wash them for them. They have to wash them. We try and include them every time there's going to be a repair or anything like that, just to try and teach them mechanically how to get through it. And I don't think it's just a mechanics problem. I think it's more of a life problem solving lesson, where we don't want them to break something, just walk away from it and expect it to fix. We try and teach them that it's their problem. They have to work through it. That, if I'm busy at work or, prepping the race car, Aiden will have to go to one of his uncles and ask them to help him out and fix his Razor. A week before Dirty Turtle, he broke the transmission in half on his 170, and he spent the week rebuilding it with his uncle.
Is that with Cam?
Yep.
That is a good uncle right there. So how has his racing career been?
We haven't raced a lot of organized events. He did the 170 race at Ultra 4 last year at Dirty Turtle. He ended up 4th. Then this year they let the kids go run around on the track, but they didn't have any really organized events. We're planning to Dirt Riot, or I can't remember the other name of the series now. It used to be Kryptonite, I believe, down in South Carolina. We're going to try and start taking them to some more of those races.
You'll put some miles on a toter, huh?
Yeah. The toter gets a ton of miles on it. The kids like traveling to the race. When we had the pickup truck, it wasn't the the funnest thing to do to try and travel with the young kids. But with the toter, they can use the bathroom going down the road, they can eat, they can lay down on the couch, do whatever. It makes it a lot more fun.
I think anyone who knows anything about anything knows to be successful in anything and be married, that you need a spouse that is totally supportive. Tell us about Megan. I mean, did you con her into the off-road life, bait and switch, or was she just always known how you were and she doesn't know any better? Tell us about this.
Megan and I met in high school, so she's kind of been involved with it ever since we've known each other. There's times she doesn't like it. We put a lot of hours into the shop, but she's supportive. She knows when we need to be in the shop, and she knows when we need to prep for races, and she'll handle the kids, and she'll do running around for us. But we kind of grew up together. We've been together for over 18 years now, so.
Congratulations. We always talk about like race family. My wife, when I was racing regularly, she understood everything it took to get the car ready, the prep, the hours on the road, and the race stuff. She was not into the events. I couldn't drag her to an event for the most part. I got her to go to the Mint 400 a couple years only because it was in Vegas. That was it. So how's Megan on that?
Early in my racing days, she was not interested in it. She just didn't want to go. The more friends she's made now with the racing, the Colvilles, the Millers, Shirleys, the Blylers, now she looks forward to going to the races to hang out with their girlfriends and do whatever.
Very cool.
They kind of chit-chat before the races, and they set up meals and do whatever, and I think it's actually kind of exciting for her now.
It's something of a support group.
Yeah.
Right. So you got out of high school up there, and I know you went into college, and you have a kind of a crazy degree. I want you to dive into that because people say they have a business degree or an economics degree or a finance degree or something. You have a degree in fire science.
Yes. I've always worked for myself, and then I had a couple friends in high school. They were actually going to a church group, and one of the church group leaders was on the fire department here, and he approached us as a group, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come down? The fire department has an Explorer program," and what an Explorer program is it's a program for younger kids. It's through Boy Scouts of America. They do the insurance and everything on it. But basically, you go job shadow the fire department. And, we go to training with them. We go on calls there's certain calls we go on with them. Obviously, they're not going to throw you in a burning building or, out on the highways and stuff. So when I was 16 years old, we went down and started working with the fire department through this Explorer program. Did that for 2 years, and then my senior year of high school, I went to the fire academy at night with a couple of friends of mine, and ended up graduating the fire academy. And when we graduated high school, we all got hired onto the Fenton Fire Department. So that's kind of how that got started. And I was doing my own thing, landscaping and lawn care. Still didn't really know what I wanted to do for college, so I just started taking classes in fire science. Ended up going to school for a couple years for that. Things progressed, and next thing you know, you're on the fire department for 18 years.
That's a good thing, right? What is the average fire in that area? Is it grass fire, wood fire? Are they house fires?
We were a combination department of, we would run EMS calls. We'd go on anything from EMS calls, traffic accidents, house fires. They covered 64 square miles of rural farm country, so grass fires were pretty prevalent. I would say the majority of the calls are usually EMS calls, and that's kind of the standard throughout many fire departments in the country. Fenton's kind of a diverse fire department where they've got the core, which is the city of Fenton, and then they contract out into these other townships. So they're trained kind of as a urban and a rural fire department, if you would say.
This is like a part-time gig for you.
Yeah, so we have a full-time chief, and then they would run a duty shift during the day, which would just be two guys on duty to take care of the BS calls here and there and do all of the pre-fire inspections and whatnot. And then Fenton's made up of 35 paid-on-call volunteers trained twice a month. Basically, you carry a pager around and you're required to respond to a certain amount of calls per year.
Wow. Not only are you a full-time dad, racing in a national circuit, you're a volunteer fireman. Let's talk about $1 million question. What do you do?
Back when I was real young, around 12, 14 years old, in Michigan, you can get your boater safety license when you're 12, so you can drive a boat by yourself. So we grew up on a lake, and our parents always pushed boat safety. So what we did, and my brother and I, my older brother, when we got our boater safety license, we used to take our parents' boat, and we would drive around the lake and mow lawns. So we started up a company mowing lawns, via the boat. Long story short, turned 16 years old, and my dad co-signed on a set of zero-turn lawnmowers for my older brother and I. Him and I started a company. It was called Tipsco Lawn Care, and we worked together for a couple years. When I graduated high school, he was in college, and he didn't really want to do it anymore. I took my graduation money, and I bought him out of that business. For the next 10, 12 years, we were primarily a lawn care and landscape contractor. Kind of got tired of the lawn care, and the name Tipsco Lawn Care had a little bit of a stigma, just as a lawn care maintenance company. We didn't want to do that anymore, so we opened up Alliance Property Management, and that's kind of morphed into more of a land clearing tree service type company. And right now we've got 9 guys working for us, and we're primarily just a tree service contractor.
So I've seen some crazy videos from you of 100-foot tall pine trees up on them on a rope, cutting stuff down, or using very, very, very long boom trucks.
Yep.
Is that your standard of how you guys are reducing the trees down to knock them down to clear? Or?
Yeah, we've got boom truck, and then we had a track lift until a couple weeks ago when it got rolled off a trailer in a traffic accident. But we had a 72-foot track lift. Basically, you can drive this track lift anywhere into someone's yard. It's got outriggers. You set it up. Yeah, we just take the trees down piece by piece. Probably 90% of our business is all residential trees. The other 10%'s, land clearing. So, yeah, it's either a boom truck, a track lift, or start climbing.
So you're working around, some constraints that you don't want to drop a tree through somebody's roof, right?
Yep.
Here recently, I've seen you've expanded your business into some heavy equipment. I believe you have an excavator now. It's quite the famous excavator from what I've seen.
Yeah, we've always had smaller equipment, skid steers, mini excavators, stuff like that around. My wife and I, we ended up buying 23 acres last fall, and I talked her into letting me buy an excavator with the mentality that she thought I was going to save money by digging our own basement and putting the septic field in and doing all this. And basically all I've done with it is buried it in a pond I've been trying to dig a couple times here. So I think it's cost us more than it's worth.
For those that don't know and want to go hit Google, excavator is a tracked piece of equipment with a very long arm and knuckle and bucket out on the end, like a backhoe. Casey, you have a Caterpillar, right?
Yeah, it's a Cat 314. It's a mid-sized machine. It's nothing huge. But when you get it stuck, it's heavy. It's 32,000 pounds, and then you sink it into a black hole of death. It takes some serious equipment to get them out of there.
No knuckling or cribbing. If I saw the pictures that I saw correctly, you would try to pull some trees down to use for cribbing underneath to use as traction. Jumping back to your early four-wheeling days of how to extract yourself, and it didn't seem to be successful. So did you have to call out like an off-road tow truck or someone else to bring another piece of equipment to extract you, or how'd this go down?
Yeah, the first time I did it, we were able just to hook some tow trucks onto it and get it out. The same pond I've sank it in twice now is right behind the house where we're building. The problem is we can't get the dirt out of there as soon as we start the house. So we're trying to get the dirt out, dig the basement, and get the house built the way the pond's situated behind the house. But when I sank it this week, it was 2 tow trucks. We ended up going and quote unquote borrowing another piece of equipment off a neighboring job site, a big Cat 300, which is a huge excavator, and it took 2 tow trucks and a Cat 300 to get it out of this hole last Tuesday night about 1 in the morning. We finally got it out of there.
Is that a borrowing because you knew the guy that owned it, or is it borrowing because you just happen to have a cat key in your pocket?
It was a borrowing because we had a cat key in the pocket, and my excavator was sinking fast, and there were thunderstorms moving in. How
did I know? Yeah, I mean that's the farm way as well, And then you go, once you return it, you go leave a 12-pack of beer on the seat, and so when the farmer comes out, he's like, "Oh, somebody borrowed my tractor last night," because
I called the guy in the morning, and he sounded okay with it, but not excited about it.
The benefits of carrying a handful of different tractor keys in your pocket, because they all seem to work the same. Komatsu, yep. Kubota, Cat. If you have one key, it works them all. But all the new Cat stuff is touch code.
Yep. Yeah, no, these are all older machines, mid-2000s, so they're all just Cat key.
Just a Cat key. So yeah, I understand that. So on the property, you've got to work your way out of it. So you've got to get the pond done first, then you got to move forward to the house. Your septic go out or lateral field or...
Yeah, the septic's up here. The property we're on perked pretty well. It's going to drain. It's just a standard field, 1,200 square feet of field with just 1,000-gallon tank. It's nothing special.
And for anyone now getting the cue on this show, we're going to talk about a little bit of everything. And if no one wanted to know about septic fields and you didn't think you were ever going to hear that discussed as a topic on this, we just checked that box. So, so congratulations, though. You're building a new house. Like, when do you think you'll be done? Completion date, target date?
We're just kind of going as we please right now, to be honest with you. We put our house for sale. We lived in the city of Fenton, and we wanted to move back south into the township where I grew up. We put our house for sale up this spring. It sold within a day. We bought a 40-foot camper, and we're living in my brother's backyard right now, to be honest. So,
and that was the segue I was going for, because when we started, your brother Cam, right?
Yep, my brother Cameron.
So they've been, super supportive. I mean, obviously, Cameron's been around racing for as long as you have. It's nice to have family that'll put up with you, and don't get too attached to that RV there, Clark. I'll be taking it with me next year.
Yeah. No, we always laugh because we've got our toter home, which is our motor home. We call that the vacation home. And then we've got the travel trailer that we live in. We call our house. All of our houses are currently on wheels.
Just rotate tires between them. Keep good rubber on the road. I send out a questionnaire. It's a web-based questionnaire for you guys to fill out as we go through this. Some of it's for information for me. Some of it's just to see what you guys fill out. And on there, it's actually question 18. It says, are there any interesting or embarrassing stories that you'd be willing to share? And your response is quite possibly one of the funniest. I mean, I laughed when I saw it. It says, my whole life is embarrassing according to my wife.
Yeah. So, we've all got good sense of humors around here, and we just kind of go through life with take it as how it comes, So, like, I guess I don't know how to explain myself, but I do stuff and I deal with the consequences later, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. That's kind of my motto in life. Like, like I said earlier, we sold our house in a day. And then we figured out a way to deal with the consequences. And people laugh at us like, oh, you're living in a trailer. And I'm like, I don't even care. If I wake up and I'm walking and talking, I'm happy.
I think it's a good mantra. I mean, it certainly worked for you. I think just that statement, it means you're good people. I think good people goes a long ways. And probably the people that are giving you a hard time, they're the ones that in 5 years from now, you gotta look at you and your new house, new built. They're gonna be like, man, I wish I could do something like that. Like, well, yeah, you go live in a trailer house for a year in your brother's front yard.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
No, and without, like you're saying, without a good support staff behind you, I call it staff, but I'm talking about, my wife and my family, my parents. My dad's 65 years old, and he's climbing up a pole barn to help me hang trusses on it, right now. And it's like, without all those people around you, you just, no matter what you do, you can't go at life alone. You need to have a good team.
Certainly blessed with good family, good friends, and developed some really great relationships that have certainly paid dividends for you, man. Here we are. It's early. It's 2002. You've just procured an aluminum CJ from Mike Coville. You're into wheeling. I know there's tons of places to wheel in Michigan. There's, Silver Lake, snowmobile trails. What got you from there to where we are pre-KOH?
Yeah, so like you said, I bought a chassis that aluminum CJ. That's where Mike Coville gets his online name, if anyone was wondering. But from when he was around the E-Rock days, I bought that chassis from him. And I guess our home stomping grounds, or whatever you want to call it, we used to run to the Badlands all the time. Badlands in Attica, Indiana is about 6 hours from us. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been there. It's great rocks, trails, mud, anything you can throw at it.
Home to Jesse Haynes.
Yep.
Home ground before he ended up in Reno. That's the Brannick boys. That's Brannick backyard, right?
Yeah, that's actually where I met Brannick. We used to go down there, and if anyone remembers Troy Myers, the original owner of the Badlands, he used to let us camp on his property back behind his house, the Mission Impossible trails, they called it. But I met Stan and Brannick, Stan from Brannick, and Dino down there. And one of my fondest memories was the first time I ever met those guys. Dino had his new wife Corinne in the car with him, and he was high centered up on a rock, and I thought I'd go up behind him and just give him a little nudge, and I ended up tumbling him and his new wife down a hill end over end. I didn't realize how big the cliff was on the other side that I shoved them off of. That was one of the first times I ever went wheeling with those Brannick guys, and probably 03, 04, I would say.
Yeah, Stan Haynes and Brandon Haynes and Dino and MacGyver and who else am I leaving out of there?
Roscoe was always down there.
Oh, that's right, Roscoe. Man, we lost Roscoe a couple years ago. That's still a sad hole in my heart on him. Troy Myers. Did I hear right? Troy Myers passed away from cancer a couple years ago?
Yeah, I don't know the exact date, but I'd probably say it's around 2 years ago we lost Troy. He was always a big innovator in the game of rock crawling, I feel like, when he had Jesse working there for him. And that's kind of when I developed a relationship, friendship with Jesse Haynes, because Jesse's a Michigan guy from back in the day. He grew up here, not too far from us, and then went down to the Badlands. And I don't know if he's the one who drew us down to the Badlands or not, but, the more we went down there, the more we were friends with him. And he would do anything to help you stay wheeling for the weekend.
I think my first foray into recognizing Jesse was he'd built it was a mid-engine car. I think they called it the Apache. And it was weird. It was like you sat on top of or almost in front of the front axle. And then the engine sat longitudinally behind the seat. And then it had a really long tail. I mean, it was probably 2005 or 2006. And it was like, that seemed like everyone was working to get weight up front for climbs. We weren't doing anything else besides climbs, and that thing climbed amazingly great, but I think it was a total failure on like every other level, and Jesse scrapped it very quickly. There's some cool stuff that came out of the Badlands in that era when Jesse was there. That put that place on the map. I've raced there once. It was XRA way back in the day when they raced in the gravel pit there.
Yeah, I think there was
I think that's what it's called.
They called the Quarry.
The Quarry, yeah. All right.
But yeah, I wheeled that aluminum Jeep down there for a while, and then Blue Torch Fab Works. It had to have been around that 04, 05 era. Blue Torch Fab Works put up, what do you want to call it? Not a raffle, but a competition or whatever to win one of their Fusion chassis.
Oh, yeah.
Pirate 4x4. You had to get so many votes. You had to get people to vote for you or do whatever. And my wife was actually probably the one who won that chassis for me. She was going to Western Michigan University at that time, and she printed up flyers of how to create an account on Pirate 4x4, log in, and vote for me to win that chassis. And I won that chassis by a landslide, if I remember correctly. And a group of buddies and I, we won the chassis. We loaded up, drove down to Dothan, Alabama on a Friday night to meet Dan DeBoss and pick up that chassis, hung out with them for the night, and turn around and peeled out back to Michigan.
That is an awesome story, especially the Dan part. Dan is the quintessential marketer, right? I wonder what his organic reach was, quote unquote, back in the day. Like, Dan had a thumb on what his return on that investment was going to be, right? Yeah,
no, he's a smart guy. He knows how to market, and he's had a couple of successful businesses, and he's still doing his I can't remember the name of his new company, but he's still going at it.
Yeah, Motobuilt. He's got Motobuilt.
Yeah, Motobuilt.
And then he's got a commercial company, Anvil Industries. He's got some big laser machines and some stuff. So you built the Fusion chassis up, right? Wheeled it?
Yeah, so I ended up taking the aluminum CJ apart, and I sold it to Brian Howard. Brian Howard, good friend of Jesse Haynes down there by the Badlands, and built the Fusion chassis up. I wheeled it for a couple of years. Just kind of got tired of it a little bit and ended up selling it off and taking a break from wheeling for 2 or 3 years. Got back into boating heavy. We've always been on lakes up here. Got into some go fast boats, hydro streams, with big Mercury motors in them and whatnot. Kind of got the itch to get back into wheeling, and bought an XJ for $400. And I went up to the local set of trails, and Mike Colville was up there, John Jacob, all guys who raced Ultra 4. And they said, hey, why don't you take that thing down to the Badlands and race in Trek? Trek was trail racing endurance circuit. And I said, what's that? And they said, oh, you just go down, race whatever you want to race. You just got to have a helmet, neck brace, some seat belts, some crappy little cage or whatever. And I said, hey, that sounds like fun. So my brother Cameron and I, and Mike, we went over to Colville's house, and we threw a cage in this thing in like 2 hours. It was the crookedest thing you've ever seen in your life. Went down and raced for the weekend, and we said, man, that's a lot of fun. Ended up building that XJ and racing it for a good chunk of the season until it fell in half. It literally just broke in half. Long story short, we pulled the drivetrain out of it, stuffed it in a new XJ, kind of converted at that point in time, converted it over to meet Ultra 4 4600 rules. Put bigger tires on it, axles, the whole 9 yards, and that's kind of how we got into the endurance racing. It was just buying a $400 piece of junk and someone talking us into going down and racing at the Badlands.
That's how it works, though, right? You want to do whatever your friends are doing, whatever it takes to drink beer with them.
Yeah, no, and Colville had already been racing, I think one of the cars not the car you bought from him, maybe the one he sold Ben Dinkins, but he had been racing King of the Hammers and trying to get us to go out there with them, and it just wasn't ever on my radar. And then I saw these race cars down there. You had Colville and Roscoe and the Brannick guys, Scooby, and they all had these big bad 4400 cars, and I was like, wow, maybe this is something cool. That's kind of how I got my interest in Ultra 4, was watching them race down at the Badlands.
How long did you stay racing that Cherokee, though?
I want to say we raced it for 2 years at the Truck Series, and then we went to I raced it in King of the Hammers and 4600 for 1 year. First year I ever raced King of the Hammers. Second year I was out there because I was out there with Colville the year before helping him. But
what year was that? 12?
It was probably, it was 12 or 13. We raced in 4600, and we finished fourth. Cameron and we finished fourth place in the biggest clapped out piece of junk Cherokee you've ever seen in your life. And we thought we were kings of the world, but it was fun. So the following season, we said, man, why don't we have some more fun in this Cherokee? And so we bought a van motor, 5.3 liter, out of a literally.
I've heard something about van motors.
Yeah. So the rolling joke's always if you got a little motor, the van motors that could. Bought this van motor and we stuffed a 5.3 LS in this Cherokee, and we thought we were going to go conquer King of the Hammers in mod class. Left the start line, went flying across. We got about 10 miles into the race, and we were crossing into the military base. Cameron says, turn. And I said, I am turning. And we hoofed it over one of those big berms at about 60 miles an hour. And he says, why didn't you turn? I said, I was trying to turn. We get the car back straight. We're going down. And next thing you know, we realized that the rear axle's no longer attached. And that's why we couldn't turn.
The front wheels were engaged, the rear were not.
Yeah. So that was kind of the end of the... We ended up doing the whole first lap with the tires rubbing in the wheel wells, basically to hold the rear axle in place, and that was the last time the Cherokee ever moved.
And so you came back from there and said, it's time to get my ducks in a row. It's time to go to tube chassis. At that point, had you decided that I'm ready for 4800?
That year was the year I think they introduced 4800 at King of the Hammers, and I think there was 8 to 12 cars probably racing, and it was kind of a little bit on our radar, and we looked at it and we said, man, maybe that's a gateway to, it costs money to race. It costs a lot of money to race a piece of junk. I always tell people, I say, you buy good parts, you're going to spend the same amount of money, so you might as well race with good parts. So we looked at 4800 class and we said, we could build a nice car that maybe we don't have to repair as often and still spend the same amount of money as we're, spending in time, put this Cherokee back together. So came home, took the Cherokee apart, and at that time, Eric Miller was trying to ramp up the production on his Pro chassis, and I knew he had the first hand-built chassis done. And so I started bugging him about it, and it took me about 6 months, but I finally got him to come off that first chassis after they were done doing all the prototyping work on it, laser scanning, changing this, changing that. They were ready to go in production with their actual production chassis. So he sold me that first prototype Miller chassis that fall. Oh, that would have been 2011. And the fall of 2010 is when I bought that chassis, or 2011, I bought that chassis from Eric. Or no, it's later than that. I'm sorry. I got my years mixed up here. But long story short, I bought that from Eric, built it over the winter, and that's when we started racing 4800. That had been 4 years ago.
That car in and of itself is actually somewhat dated, but you still put it on the podium at KOH the last 2 years.
Yeah, we've raced that car 4 times at KOH. First year, we had drive shaft failure. Second year, I put a big kid motor in it and broke transfer case in half at mile 50. Pulled in the pits, we swapped the transfer case mid-race, and we finished, I think, 16th or 17th that year. And then the The last 2 years, we've had great success. We put better parts in the car. We've developed a lot of stuff with Miller, as far as not develop it on his end, but he's helped develop my car as far as telling me what I need to do to make it faster as far as parts, and they help me out along the way. And we've got the car basically built to the point where it's one of the Miller 4400 cars with single shocks on it right now.
No, you don't say. So kind of like you're sandbagging?
Yeah, you could. People call it sandbaggers all the time, but 4800, it's a good class. It's a lot of fun. It's more budget friendly than 4400. We do plan to move up, to another class here soon. We've had a lot of fun the last 4 years developing this car, and I've had a lot of fun doing it and some success,
No, you've been the quintessential guy to beat for the last 2 years. You've really owned it. It's really cool to see. You've been an overnight success in just under 10 years. That's what it looks like on this end, that you've cut your teeth, you've paid your dues, you've put in your time, you built up, you scrap stuff, and then you've worked your way into working out all the bugs front to back, left to right on this Miller Pro chassis. I didn't realize how involved Eric and Eric Miller Motorsports has been involved in your program, but that's actually no surprise to me that he is. Eric's a very thorough, dot your I's, cross your T's type guy. So
yeah, sometimes I don't get frustrated with him, but I'm always like, Eric, come on, let's move forward with this, or let's do this. And the amount of research and development and thought process that they put into every single part of their cars is unreal. And after he sends you the parts, you're like, wow, that really makes sense. And they work right. They're square. The parts are machined properly. You don't have failures with their stuff. So I would say a lot of our success is working with him and the guys up at Big B who do a lot of his manufacturing. We've got a good car, and you've got to have a good car to win.
Tell me about, I think everyone wants to hear this. What has been the line items in the way you handle your race program that have put you in the catbird seat to win, to be successful, not once or twice, but continuously throughout all of last year and all of this year? It seems like, certainly Miller's involvement. Were the things from Miller's program that you were able to implement, or are you just very OCD, things have to be XYZ, have to all line up perfectly, and we're going to do that every single time? Tell me about your race prep to everything kind of leading up to the green flag.
Obviously, race prep is huge. We put a ton of hours into the car. We rebuild everything. Everything gets torqued and rechecked, and you've got to, like I said earlier, you've got to have good parts and work with good companies like them. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. And I kind of pride ourselves on some of the relationships we've built over the years with, Brannick's a big part of our car, doing machine work and supplying us with different stuff, and the work we do on the suspension with PAC and Collins Motorsports that's huge for us.
I know Jason Yude over at PAC. I know you've been very much involved with PAC Racing's development of their suspension spring line. How's that play in with the Gilbert Brothers Motorsports program?
Actually, we were some of the first ones to actually run their Jeep Speed Springs on the XJ, and that's how we've kind of developed a relationship with them over at PAC. But Jason actually grew up probably 5 miles from us, and I met him through some four-wheeling friends back in early 2000s, and then his involvement with Mike Colville on his 4400 car, and then it just kind of morphed into this the 4800 stuff. Jason kind of came to us and said, hey, we've got plenty of 4400 cars running our stuff. We want to kind of get into this new 4800 market and see what we can do. And PAC, along with Billy Gorky over at Collins Motorsports, we kind of teamed up here a little bit together, and the amount of development they put into our shocks and our spring package and our sway bars and the DSR2s and everything on our car that PAC builds with the fine tuning of the Collins guys is a real reason we can plow that car through about everything you can put it into. So
I'll say my experience with PAC was, when I was building the Unicorn, I went to them for the rear sway bar on that car. Working with Jason, he had given me some calculations that they had based off of Eric Miller's car. We took that, ran that through the kind of the chassis calculator on that being Eric's car being a solid front axle, this being an independent front suspension car. We came up with what would be the bar and the arm length from Jason, had it built. It went to Lake Havasu. It went to Easy Rick. It got put on the car. Out of the box, the sway bar was perfect. It was completely dialed. There's many other things about the car that was not dialed on day one. The sway bar was. They were certainly one company that I couldn't say enough good stuff about. Rarely in motorsports and the type of prototypical stuff that we're doing, new cars, new builds, new parts, and putting them all together and making them work together, do you get something that works perfectly out of the box? I gotta say, Pat killed it for me anyway, and it sounds like they've been doing their homework with you guys, so very cool.
Yeah, it works. So there's not a lot of guessing and checking. They can get you pretty close to the ballpark right out of the gate, which I think a lot of people think they can just build a car and go out and race it, and they don't understand the hours and hours and hours of testing that you really need to put into a car. Shock tuning, and it's not just shock tuning. It's like you're saying, it's sway bar tuning, it's shock tuning, it's tire pressures, it's moving this in the car, moving that in the car. The critical systems correct.
I think that's really cool to get that out there. Is we've seen an influx of many new racers into Ultra 4. Someone come in via UTV, or someone go buy a used 4400 car because they saw it on ESPN or CBS Sports. There is a learning curve, and you guys, Miller, and there's some other guys out there. Randy over at Jimmy's 4x4, the guys at Trent Fab. There's so many builders out there. Campbell, that many people have came before him to kind of level this playing field. Now it's, again, like Miller does very well, is the dotting the I's, crossing the T's of what it takes to win. It's all the detail work that it takes to win. And if you're not privy to even what the details are, how can you check them off, and how can you be successful at the details if you don't even know what they are? And I know you were able to definitely draw on your past experiences to be successful, and it's very cool to see it paying dividends last 2 years for you.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it's not just, you can't just go out and buy a car. I mean, if you walk into anyone's pits, we can use Miller as an example again. The night before KOH, they're not sitting around the campfire just shooting the crap about what they think is going to happen tomorrow. They've got computer models up with with fuel calculations. They've got each pit laid out with what's going to each pit, who's going where, what's going to happen with this situation. They've got they call it their command center. During the race, they've got live tracking on the cars. They know where all their pit crew members are. They've got radios big enough to talk to the entire course. And a lot of our successes come from that, because I looked at him and the guys that were winning when we were racing with Mike Colville. We look at what he was doing, and I basically grew my race program off of learning off of those guys. So I didn't just come out of the box winning, because of my own knowledge. Basically, I sat back and watched all these other teams and learned what they were doing, and basically grew my team on their dime as far as research and development, because I didn't have to go out there and spend the money to make the mistakes that they had done earlier in their careers and they had already learned from.
I hope to have someone from Miller on at some point. I don't know if Eric's going to be the guy, or maybe we get Lee on here. I will certainly figure some way to get someone from their program on here. One thing that came out of this past KOH that I got out of them that blew my mind, I know there's nerds everywhere. I'm going to call them nerds. There's nerds everywhere. Yeah. People that are just so involved over, and they obsess about what they're doing. And when I discovered that Miller had it down to the race mileage of the course as build, what was it? Was it like 250 miles this year? Or it was whatever the number was, what they were actually coming up with on GPS after they'd ran it numerous times, and what their mileage was. Their mileage was off the chart, because the mileage of the course was, race miles are not actual miles.
Yeah, and that comes from Ryan. We does ocean floor mapping, from what I understand. So that's what he kind of does for a living, is measuring stuff. 2 nights before the race, I said, he was doing the fuel calculations for my car, and I said, Ryan, I said, there's no way I'm going to make that first lap. And he says, you'll make that first lap. And I said, he pulls up the data and he says, look at this. He says, they're 30% off on their mileage. And I said, no way. And sure enough, I didn't trust him.
Yeah, I don't know if it was 30, but it was like 18% or something. I thought it was
very close.
It was a big number.
Yeah, it might not be 30, but it was a big number. And we were going to splash going out of pit 1, do the first loop, and splash coming back through pit 1. And he says, you're not going to need that extra fuel. and we came back through pit 1 with almost a half a tank of fuel. It's little things like that. It's like you pull in the pits and you lose 2 minutes or 3 minutes. We're not NASCAR here. These guys can think they pit fast, in Ultra 4, but the fact of the matter is we don't. But without Ryan being in Miller's command center, we would have never known that.
With races being decided by seconds over 200 miles, a 2 minute, 3 minute stop is a big deal. You add the safety constraints of, what can happen when all of a sudden people start touching the car and with live fuel.
Yep, definitely.
Why take the risk?
Yeah, it's not worth it.
You busted out your second win this year. This year was very interesting, and you battled with Levi Shirley. Levi Shirley brought out his old, I believe it's a Sniper Fab car. Is that right? Old 2-seat?
Yeah, I believe so. I think Terry Madden had the same car at one point in time. Are there two cars out there somewhere? Yeah.
At one point. Gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. He was out of Oklahoma City, I believe. Don that built him, and then Don ended up in oil field working. He actually ended up here in Houston for a little while. But yeah, so I knew Levi busted out that old car, converted it to 4800, went head to head with you. At that point, the defending King of the Hammers champion of EMC. You guys had a tight race, right? The whole first half until I think he lost a transmission on Jack North.
Yeah, he followed us for a little while. I want to say the first 20 miles or so. I did that first pit, and I think he caught up to me then. And I got out of the pits in front of him, but we knew he was behind us. He started pushing on us a little bit, and we said, we're going to run our own race until we need to push the car, because even though the EMC race is a lap shorter than KOH, it's still tough on those cars. Those 37-inch tires just don't take the bumps like the big cars. And he passed us, and we just paced off of him for the next probably 40, 50 miles. We knew we couldn't push the cars that hard for that long. We got in behind him, I think it is Jack North. He got hung up, and he couldn't back up or couldn't go forward. I don't remember what it was, but we ended up sneaking around him. And at that point, we were able to pretty much walk away with the race.
I didn't go pull up splits. My recollection, it was like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You were way out front. I do remember seeing on the live tracker when you came out of outer limits, I think the next car behind you was Level. When Level came out of, I feel like it was was Spooner's the down. Yeah, you came down Spooner's and then made the left. I feel like when Level made that left, you were already almost at the podium or very close.
Yeah, physically, we were quite a ways ahead. I don't remember. Bailey Cole was coming from the back of the pack this year. I don't remember what the split time on him was. So physically, he looked farther back than he really was on time.
He took a back of the pack start for, was it motor? They replaced the motor before qualifying. He missed qualifying or...
Yeah, they lost the motor, and I don't think the car was ready for qualifying, so he had to take a rear start.
We saw that worked out for Tom Ways a couple years ago. I mean, Tom didn't finish that race. It kind of opened up a chink in the armor that if you have a fast car and you're a good driver, you can make up a bunch of corrected time. The rear start's not a bad thing unless you get stuck behind the traffic jam.
The rear start could almost be an advantage, I think, sometimes. Not due to traffic, but the people out front get lackadaisical.
So what you're saying was the guys who get out front end up lackadaisical and they aren't pushing as hard as somebody in the back. You
get out front, and if you don't have the pit crew who has the sense, with proper split times, you think you're 20 minutes out in front, but somebody started a half hour behind you has got you on time, and you don't even realize it. So that's my biggest problem with leading a race is trying to pace myself properly. You don't want to be pushing too hard where you break the car, but you can't get lackadaisical and let someone come up from behind.
So which one do you prefer then? Do you prefer to be the fox or do you prefer to be the hound?
I like to be the hound, but the problem is you want those qualifying points.
Fair enough. So in the grand scheme of the year, in the points race, you need those qualifying points. I got it.
Yeah, 7 qualifying points is huge, plus KMC Hard Charger Award, they pay for your race, so... Financially, it's smart, I guess.
That's not a guess. Plus, you get the bragging rights and a cool green hat, at least last year, right?
Yeah, they went away from the 1980s green hats this year and got us some cooler looking ones.
I like those hats, though. I thought they were good looking. We've totally rolled up to modern 2019 Casey Racing. What are your plans for end of year? Are you going to go out to Reno for nationals, rolling into KOH?
Yeah, we're planning on finishing out this season in this car the way it sits right now. We're kind of up in the air. We're going to put this car up for sale at the end of the year, or put it up for sale now and rent a car for Reno or whatever we need to do. If the car doesn't sell, we'll probably be converting it over to 4400 for next season. And that's just a kind of a mental personal choice for me. I like to be challenged, when we're racing, and I feel like if we go out and have a good race right now, we can win most of the races if we want to. We just want to get into something a little bit more challenging, and on the East Coast, it's a little bit difficult with the lower 4,800 car counts. If we were out west, I'd probably stay in 4,800 class. There's a lot of fast guys out there. We just have a little bit lower car counts, so I think I'm going to move up to 4,400 for next year.
I'm guessing that you're going to lean on Miller Motorsports for another chassis in the future. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, they're working on some new car part. Change the, I don't know if Eric's going to be able to run those straight axle shirts anymore he's got. They're working on the modeling of them right now and the development of it. So I'm hoping we can get into one of their new chassis.
The Zero Fox Given?
Yeah.
I've got one of those. Oh, man.
We're leaning on him. There's a couple of us leaning on him pretty hard to try and put some wings on the front of these cars.
Yeah, some chicken wings.
Yep.
Have you driven or ridden in an IFS car yet?
Yeah, I raced with
Mike Colville
in his ginger chicken car that Jay Calloway owns now.
And did that not feel like cheating?
That's why I don't understand how Eric Miller has had the success he has in his straight axle car in 4,400 class. I think if you take a driver who's driven a straight axle car as fast as he has and put him in an independent front suspension car, he's going to go out there and dominate.
Fully agree.
Yeah, no, the first time I rode in Colville's car, we were doing some work with Pack Racing Springs, and they were... I don't know if you remember the JRI shock days, call them the radio shocks. They were doing some electric shock development with Pack as far as bypass valving and stuff. And I got in that car, and the first time we hit a washout, I thought we were going to endo the car, and it just floated over it, And it was at a speed that I've never driven before, and he scared the crap out of me that day. But how much smoother they ride, how much more reactive the steering is, it's a whole different animal.
I will be pulling for you there. Just watching what you did just this past year. I really wish you luck in 4,400. I mean, there's certainly a stacked field. On any given day, the top 20 guys still have a shot at it after the green flag drops. Good racing. Very good racing.
Yep.
And with as good a wheelman as you are, I don't think you'll have any problem. As good as your program is, I don't think you'll have a problem. You'll have a lot of success there. If it's a new car, working the bugs out, or if it's this car, working the bugs out of it after the transition. But Casey, thank you very much for being episode 3 of the Talent Tank. Any closing remarks from you?
I think we've gone over everything. Thanks for having me on. It was a fun little chat here, and look forward to hearing the episode.
All right, Casey.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll catch you later, man.
Yep, have a good one.
Thank you for listening and taking a dive into the Talent Tank. Please like and subscribe on Instagram @The Talent Tank or our website, thetalenttank.com.